eerie, unstable, sadistic, repulsive, and just plain bizarre. Welcome to my list of the top 5 most unsettling inmates to appear in the British TV prison drama Within These Walls. This programme, if you don't already know it, is set in a fictional women's prison in London called Stone Park, and it was originally screened on UK television between 1974 and 1978, running for a total of 5 series during this time. Notably, it ended up being the original inspiration for its better-known Australian successor, Prisoner Cell Block H. Each episode of Within These Walls is a standalone story, usually based around a particular inmate or set of inmates, with Stone Park's senior staff being the ones that make up the main cast of regulars across different episodes. Typically then, the prisoners are guest characters, although some do appear in more than one episode, a handful even becoming recurring characters. In this video then, I'll be taking a look at 5 of the most memorable prisoners to have appeared in the show. Memorable, that is, from the point of view of being unnerving, strange or disturbing in some way. These characters are, in my opinion, Stone Park's most unsettling inmates. At number 5 is the character of Marion Pearce. Marion is played by Joanna David and appears in 2 separate stories, the aptly named Series 4 episode Vacuum, and then a follow-up episode in Series 5 called Raft. Both stories are written by PJ Hammond, the creator of well-known sci-fi fantasy series Sapphire and Steel. He was a television writer famed for his off-centre, psychological approach to storytelling, including through his contributions to programmes like The Gentle Touch, Ace of Wands and many others. And the scripts he penned for Within These Walls are certainly no different. Marion then appears at Stone Park in her first story Vacuum as a transferee from another prison. She's in her mid-20s and inside on charges of arson, having started a fire while at work, apparently as a rather extreme way of resigning. A search of her records by the prison welfare officer reveals not only that she has form when it comes to arson, but that she has something of a fractured family background, and that she's always been quiet and socially withdrawn. But not, it turns out, as quiet and withdrawn as she is now.
Now, have you ever been alone in a room or a cell with Marion Pearce?
Well, no.
The silence can be deafening. You find that you can almost hear your own thoughts, wandering, going off a tangent.
Because since her arrival at Stone Park, she's not spoken to any of the staff or other inmates, despite repeated attempts to communicate with her. In fact, Marion counts as an unsettling character exactly because she remains completely, utterly silent for the whole duration of Vacuum. And I mean that. She doesn't say one word in the entire episode. When she does communicate, it's by gesture, and that only happens once or twice. Now, that might sound like it would be a bit dull to watch, but it's actually done to very eerie effect. She seems like a living doll or something. In each of their scenes, Marion just stares into space devoid of expression, but all the time she's definitely present. Actor Joanna David manages to skillfully convey a sense that this character is always fully aware of what is going on around her, but is unable to bring herself to respond, even when she's being deliberately provoked into reacting by people who think she's simply refusing to speak.
You are sexually unattractive. Well, to me, and since my appreciation of the opposite sex is pretty average, I would say that you're sexually unattractive to most men.
In her silence then, she's thoroughly isolated, not only from the staff but also the other prisoners. And this isolation is emphasised by writer PJ Hammond in the fact that Marion is the only proper inmate character to appear in this episode. All the other prisoners are background extras, and she doesn't directly interact with any of them in their shared scenes.
That's a good morning's work, Marion. Making up for the last 3 days. Can't say I blame you. Nobody likes being alone, working alone. I mean, really being alone. Now do they? Marion.
She's also the first inmate character in the programme's run to be shown within a hitherto unseen solitary confinement block. It's a grim place, right down in the bowels of the prison. It has me in mind of the old hanging cell in Bad Girls, where Von Atkins met a grisly end. And Marion's appearance here in her dank, bare cell is very atmospheric, and occurring as it does near the start of the episode, it helps to quickly establish the theme of isolation, as well as of her unjust treatment by one of the prison officers, a major part of the story. Because her extreme withdrawal from others since she arrived at the prison is tied to the actions of one particular officer, Diane Royal, played by Amanda Murray, a character who seems strangely fascinated by Marion and just can't leave her alone, including unfairly placing her on report so that she's sent to solitary. Diane, it turns out, has her own pathologies going on. And if you want to see more of this tale of trauma and its long-reaching effects and the weird psychologically charged relationship between prisoner Marion and Officer Diane, you'll have to watch for yourself. Marion's story does then continue with the sequel episode Raft, where the character gradually begins to communicate verbally with staff and inmates on the prison's medical unit.
Hello, Marion.
Hello.
And this episode features Diane Royal too, going on her own personal journey. But again, you'll have to watch for yourself to see exactly what happens. Marion, though, still struggles to connect, and in her eerie and extreme emotional isolation, she's definitely one of the most unsettling inmates to be housed at Stone Park.
Marion?
Yes?
I said, won't you join us? Join in with us.
No.
And number 4 on my list of most unsettling prisoners is the character of Kate Bonney. Kate is played by Jenny Stoller and appears in the Series 5 episode Love Me, Love My Bear, written by Terence Feely, incidentally the creator of another vintage London weekend television show, The Gentle Touch. Kate arrives at Stone Park Prison charged with criminal damage after a serious kicking off at work. One day, seemingly for no reason, she started smashing up the kitchens of the fast food joint where she was an employee. Fair enough, I'd say. Kate stands out from the start by virtue of the fact that she's always shown clutching a rather creepy looking toy panda bear from which the episode gets its title. This teddy, who carries the name Charlie, plays a key role in Kate's story, and indeed largely accounts for why I think she's such an unsettling character. When Kate first arrives at the prison, she doesn't say a word, and it's soon established that she's either unable or unwilling to speak, which admittedly on the face of it sounds rather like the character of Marion Pierce, who we've just looked at. And alongside this is the fact that Kate and Marion were of a similar age to each other, and have both committed apparently senseless crimes while at work. So far, so familiar. However, here the similarities end, and it turns out that Kate is in fact a very different kettle of fish, a rather aggressive kettle of fish, as we'll soon find out. Even in her first scene, as she's inducted by the officers, we can see something of this aggression in Kate's demeanour, and there's also the immediate weirdness going on, with a contrast between her quite imposing physical presence and her needy possession of a child's toy. And battered and disfigured by age, Charlie's clearly been part of Kate's life since she was very young. And Charlie, as I've said, plays a key role in Kate's story. Importantly, while as mentioned, Kate is initially quiet, refusing to speak or answer any questions, it doesn't take too long for her to be coaxed out of her shell a little by the interventions of a switched-on and friendly prison officer, the aptly named Officer Dove, played by a pre-Not the 9 o'clock news Pamela Stevenson. But though Kate is now communicative, and the story does feature her interacting with other inmates to some degree, this communication, it's got to be said, does take a rather unusual form. That is, via Charlie, the bear.
Charlie? Do you like this place?
Not much.
You know why you're here, don't you?
They put us here.
Because of what happened.
That was their fault.
Well, how is it their fault?
They know.
But it was you and Kate who smashed the place up.
Who, me? Can you see a little bear like me putting himself about the place like that? I wouldn't have the nerve.
So you're putting all the blame on Kate, are you? Leaving her in the lurch?
That won't do you no good. You won't split us up that way, will he, Kate?
But you are saying Kate was responsible.
I told you it was their fault.
In what way?
They know.
Prison psychologist Dr. Dady, played by young Simon McCorkindale, tries to use Charlie's chattiness to find out more about Kate and her background, but as we can see, this is something that isn't that easy. Kate may clutch a toy bear, but she's certainly not slow-witted. Dr. Dady, though, suspects that Kate suffers from a very serious psychological disturbance that explains her violence at work, and his suspicions subsequently appear justified when Kate, again seemingly at random, goes on the rampage in the prison dining room.
Bonnie, drop that chair. Drop that chair, Bonnie. Girl, put her in her room. Now stand back, the rest of you, and stop all that noise.
This scary incident is, however, far from being the episode's climax, and nor is Kate's story just one of high drama, even though it's certainly dramatic. It's also told in a very thoughtful way, increasingly highlighting as it goes along the situation of someone who's been sentenced as a criminal but is actually mentally ill and in need of ongoing help, not punishment and then chucking back into the community. While Kate does get some support while at Stone Park, particularly from Dr. Dady and Officer Dove, ultimately she's a square peg in the system. So, away from the creepy talking Teddy and the propensity towards attacking people, it's this that is perhaps the most unsettling aspect of all to Kate. And actor Jenny Stoller more than rises to the challenge of playing a very difficult role, bringing to the character a great feeling of sympathy alongside that of danger. And as for those eyes... And now my list of most unsettling prisoners shifts slightly in its focus, from inmates who unsettle simply in being mentally or emotionally disturbed, however severely this may be, towards those who are more actively unsettling in being downright sadistic characters. If Kate Bonney has form for attacking people, she is, to her own unbalanced mind, just defending herself. She never actually takes pleasure in hurting anyone. The same can't be said, though, for the character who sits at number 3 on my list. Witness one Donna Wyatt, played by Elizabeth Cassidy. Donna appears in the Series 3 episode Babyface, written by the brilliant David Butler, who conceived the idea for Within These Walls as a programme in the first place. Unfortunately, to describe the character of Donna means I need to refer to a significant part of the episode's main plot, so please be aware that this overview will involve spoilers. The story of Babyface, then, largely centres around an alpha female inmate called Mick Andrews, played by Linda Marlowe, who's hard-faced and something of a bully. Mick, I mean, not Linda. Several of the inmates on North Wing have been receiving nasty injuries in a series of mysterious accidents, and gradually the staff begin to suspect that there's a terror campaign or protection racket at play. And it seems increasingly obvious to the viewers as the episode unfolds that Mick is the one behind this racket, that she's been hurting prisoners who won't pay up. However, the exact truth of the matter ends up being even more dark, and this is where Donna Wyatt comes in. A young, pretty and seemingly naive prisoner, Donna has a childlike quality to her, hence the nickname Babyface. She's quiet in general, gently spoken and unassuming, but also has a constantly distracted vibe, like there's something on her mind or that she's away in her own little world. It's later revealed that she has the mental age of a 12-year-old, and a rather messed up 12-year-old at that. Donna's shown spending time with Mick, and in their body language the two seem close, with Mick often playing with Donna's hair, though Donna also sometimes appears to be a little uncomfortable with or irked by Mick's attentions. The only thing she seems to be really interested in is going to the prison's art classes, but the pictures she paints are, shall we say, rather unpleasant, most of them being weirdly composed images of screaming faces. In fact, some of her pictures are just a tad reminiscent of a rather well-known painting.
You enjoy it?
Yes.
Well, the instructor thinks you have a lot of promise. They're very powerful. What were you thinking when you did them?
And it turns out, alongside painting these horrible pictures of people in distress and then plastering her cell walls with them, Donna's got an appetite for distress in real life, or rather for causing it, whether it be with a knife, some broken glass, or a hot oven door. And if she thinks people are frightened of her, and especially if they ever refer to her as being crazy, she goes after them all the more. Much to Mick's delight, who's been exploiting Donna's instability and her interest in inflicting pain, and then painting pictures about it, in order to convince everyone that protection is a bloody good idea. A charming story there then, and it all comes to a head with two members of staff feeling the sharp edge of Donna's specially adapted palette knife. I'll leave it there to avoid risk of overdoing the spoilers, but Donna certainly qualifies as one of the more sadistic and disturbed individuals to have been housed at Stone Park, and Mick's pretty screwed up too by association. Actor Elizabeth Cassidy offers a fairly subtle take on a character who's inherently creepy in her emotionally stunted nature, including nicely capturing Donna's increasingly apparent egotistical spitefulness and her paranoia as the episode progresses.
You don't give the orders. I give the orders! You think you're going to get out of here, don't you? Well, you're not. You're going to beg me. You're going to beg.
But my pick for the number 2 most unsettling prisoner ups the ante even more in the sadism stakes. Meet Carol Barris, played by Louise Hall Taylor, who appears in the Series 5 episode Arrivals Departures, again a David Butler script. Louise Hall Taylor was at this point perhaps most known for presenting television aimed at children, and so she was really playing against type when she appeared behind bars as the cruel and depraved Carol, an unbalanced young woman who you'd never trust alone with your grandparents, especially if she's had a drink or 10. Again, please be aware that this overview necessarily contains some spoilers. When we first see her, Carol appears to be simply a worried first-time offender. She's been imprisoned after smashing a row of shop windows while under the influence, and she's now rather quiet and withdrawn, presumably shaken by what's happened. She's received a fairly minor sentence though, with the authorities judging her to be a low-level offender and probably not the type of person who'd normally go on a violent bender. Little do they know just how wrong they've got it. In reality, Carol's a raging alcoholic in every sense of the expression, and when she arrives at Stone Park, she's suffering drink withdrawal symptoms. Cunningly, she manages to hide the most severe symptoms, such as stomach spasms, when she's with the prison doctor and other staff, and everyone seems to put a general demeanour down to her predicament, being a newbie to prison life. Everyone, that is, aside from her cellmate, elderly recidivist Georgie Weeks, a popular series regular played by Betty Romaine. Georgie is herself an alcoholic, albeit a recovering one, with a long history of drunk and disorderly offences, and it's not long before she twigs that Carol has a bit of a problem with the booze. But even she doesn't realise quite how deeply troubled Carol actually is. Because while Carol's in the desperate situation of being in the throes of addiction, and indeed her desire to get hold of alcohol is a driver of this story, there is alongside this a rather hard-faced and surprisingly collected aspect to her character. Actor Louise Hall Taylor portrays very convincingly someone who we can feel from early on is not quite right, beyond being an alcoholic. There's a certain weird coldness about Carol with hints of an underlying cruelty, and this stands in sharp contrast to the good-natured, if far from flawless character of Georgie.
You can call me Georgie if you like, short for Georgina. And you're Carol, aren't you? Oh, back up, dear. I know it takes a bit of getting used to, but you're here and I'm here, and if we're going to share, we got to talk. Georgie and Carol, they get along like an house on fire. Here, shall I help you move your things? on the shelf. This one's yours. That where you want 'em? Oh, don't talk then. I've shared with you before, lots of you snotty-nosed piece. I might have known the moment I come in here, see you, taking the bottom bed, leaving me the top to climb up to at my age. Ought to have had a room of me own. Oh, what's the use? Oh, Georgie, Georgie. Oh, you can laugh then. Well, what's so funny? Oh, well. Best way, I suppose. Here. What you want? What we both want's a nice cup of tea.
You can get drinks here.
Wish you could. But you can usually swing a cup of tea if you know the screws on duty.
And it's her cruel and sadistic tendency, subtle at first, that becomes ever more apparent as the episode goes on, with Carol eventually unable to stop herself from revealing to the prison welfare officer Miss Clark, and then later Georgie, something of the dark truth of what she'd been involved in before she was arrested. She and her boyfriend, fellow drunks, got their kicks by hanging around in derelict buildings and, let's just say, treating the homeless old men that they'd find there rather less than kindly. Okay, I'll also add that razor blades and heart attacks were involved.
Why did you stay with him? Why didn't you just refuse to help him when he did those things?
He was too strong for me.
He actually forced you to go with him?
He didn't have to. I couldn't say no.
All right, Carol, you needn't tell me any more. I'll come and see you again soon. And try not to think about it. It's all over. And just tell yourself you're very lucky indeed that he left you when he did.
Carol, love, what'd she say to you?
Leave me alone.
Carol, what's happened?
I told her a story. A good one.
Disturbingly, it turns out there's even more to this sick story which Carol takes such pleasure in sharing than meets the eye. But if you haven't already seen this episode, I'll let you discover exactly how so for yourself. It's true to say, though, that poor old Georgie certainly comes to regret offering her help via some stolen liquor to someone who thinks nothing of hurting and maiming, or worse, members of the older generation. Before we get to the number one in this list of most unsettling inmates, there's just time for a few quick honourable mentions of some other characters from the show who unsettled the viewer in some way, but didn't quite make my top 5. And again, spoilers. Self-harming sex worker Judy Fryer, played by Shirley Cheriton from the Series 2 episode Skivers. Pill-addled heavy Greta Gregory from the Series 5 episode The Inquest and Freedom, played by Avril Clark. And deluded baby smotherer Poppy Hall, played by Maureen Morris from the Series 3 episode Prison Cat.
I done what you wanted. I got rid of the baby.
With what?
I should have done it before it was born, like you said. But I've done it now. And there won't be any more. I'm going to see the family planning lady. I got rid of the cat as well. They think it was the cat that killed the baby, so they're going to put it away. You will come and see me now, won't you?
You kill
the baby?
I just pressed the pillar down.
So now we've reached the big number one and our top 5 of the most unsettling inmates to appear in the programme Within These Walls. Enter the cold and calculating child murderer, Aileen Crudley. Aileen is played by Geraldine Moffat and appears in a total of 3 separate stories across the course of the series. She first features in the Series 2 episode The Slap, penned by Kathleen J. Smith, a former assistant governor as well as a writer, and so someone with plenty of experience of the nasty realities of prison life. And Aileen's certainly an example of a nasty and disturbing element of the inmate population, and this is despite the fact that in her manner, she's the model of politeness. Aileen, when we first meet her, is in the early stages of a life sentence, having recently been convicted of the kidnap and murder of a small boy. The victim was the son of her former boss, who she felt owed her something after he'd sacked her. She wanted his money foremost, but when he refused to pay the ransom, she didn't think anything of following through with her threats and taking the life of his son as an alternative form of revenge, and, as we'll see in a minute, an alternative way of generating cash. Already, Aileen settled quite easily into life behind bars, some minor bother from the other prisoners aside, making the most of her newfound infamy to make money through engaging with an interested media and public. She's just been paid handsomely by a newspaper who have serialised her diaries, in which events leading up to and including the murder of Aileen's unfortunate young victim are graphically detailed.
I can't believe that she actually took him and showed him how he was going to be drowned in the bath. That didn't come out in the trial? No. She's too clever for that.
She's also busy pursuing a litigation case against another publication, The Libel, and she also spends time reading through and collecting the best of the very many letters she regularly receives from members of the public, with the intention of publishing these as a book one day. This episode, then, is a wry commentary on the media and on society's endless appetite for sensationalism and horror, where people who have committed very serious and disturbing offences are courted as well as condemned. In this context, crime has paid for Aileen. Indeed, a particularly interesting aspect of her story is Aileen's desire for upward social mobility via the making of money. Her key motive in life appears to be cold, hard profit. She's too good, too clever, to be poor like her simple-minded parents are. It's apparent then that she suffers from a massive superiority complex, which, alongside the lack of guilt she feels over the killing of an innocent, is a clear marker of her psychopathy.
Enjoy that one? They're all from neurotics. The ones that want me put in a gas chamber, and the ones that want me saved by Christ. All from freaks.
Perhaps you don't want to see any more.
I shall read them all. They're an insight into the human mind.
Don't you think you ought to see a psychiatrist?
It's funny how many people want me to see a psychiatrist. Do you get a commission for it?
Most people think you need one.
To tell me what? I had parents who were inferior to me. I know that. To tell me I wanted something better than factories and fish and chips. And push myself through night school, then work till I was sick to become a private secretary to a company director who turned out to be a cheat, a liar, and an ignoramus. I've always had more brains than the people who are supposed to give me orders. I don't need a psychiatrist to tell me I resent it.
So you took it out on a child?
I had nothing against the boy, though I despised his father. That's why he got rid of me, because he knew I looked down on him. I'd put through deals that made tens of thousands, while he was out in the afternoons bedding his women. I was entitled to what I demanded. I wouldn't have hurt the boy if his father had thought he was worth paying for. Just proves what a lout his father was.
Got one here, addressed to the woman who has no soul who murdered little Paul. Think that'll be you?
The character of the officer here in this clip is a key one to the episode. As with Marion Pearce, who we looked at earlier in our top 5, Aileen's story in The Slap revolves around her psychologically charged relationship with a member of staff, in this case the principal officer on her wing, lonely and haunted Miss Troy, played by Antonia Pemberton. Whilst Aileen is unpopular with inmates and officers alike, Miss Troy's disapproval of her seems to run deeper than most, certainly in comparison with other members of staff. The reasons for this become apparent as the episode unfolds, with there being a certain symmetry between the two women that extends beyond them both having come from backgrounds of poverty. I won't spoiler it too much, but a personal situation from Miss Troy's past which continues to affect her to this day is what drives her heightened loathing of the child killer in her charge. That said, she largely stays on the right side of professional in her daily dealings with Crudley, and she does try to make sure she treats everyone impartially. But Aileen nonetheless begins to pick up on Miss Troy's deep-seated contempt, and whether it's because these feelings are mutual, or simply because she senses another way to profit at someone else's expense, she vindictively decides to exploit it.
One thing I've been meaning to mention. My name is Mrs. Crudley, if you don't mind.
I speak to you exactly as I speak to the rest.
The governor calls me Mrs. Crudley.
Go and get your dinner.
I haven't the time. I'm due to see the education officer about books for my BA. I only came back to put these safe.
So it's a BA. Fat chance I had to study for a BA.
I'm not surprised.
Did you say something?
I said I'm not surprised you didn't have a chance of studying for a BA.
That's right. I didn't commit a murder. And I wasn't sent to prison to be kept for £50 a week at the taxpayer's expense.
But if the officers didn't keep asking for wage rises, it wouldn't cost the taxpayer that much.
If the wages were 100 times as much, they wouldn't be worth having to live with your sort.
Why do it then?
Because, thank God, all prisoners aren't your sort, Crudley.
My name is Mrs. Crudley.
Mrs. Nothing. You've never been married in your life, small wonder.
Nor have you, small wonder.
Shall I get the exercise in now, Miss Troy?
I didn't have a chance to study because I went to work when I was 14 to help out because we were poor. I'm not ashamed of that.
No, my family was poor and I was ashamed of it. In fact, I was disgusted by it.
Go and see the education officer.
You know what our parents were, Miss Troy? Morons.
Aileen.
All right, my parents. I got started off at work at 14, same as her. My mummy and daddy put me in a factory sewing negligees that sold for 3 months of my wages. And they were proud of themselves instead of vomiting at it. They got no envy. Nice people. No ambition.
You'll be late for your appointment.
They didn't want me to be better than they were. That's why they hate me now. Because I've got more out of life than they have.
God help your poor parents.
And yours. They'd have been better off taking to a life of crime.
You watch what you're saying.
And so would you. Next time you go out, kidnap a toddler. Hold it to ransom. And if they won't pay it, just take it and... Thank you, Miss Troy.
I won't give away the ending of the episode, and I can't discuss the 2 sequel episodes both from Series 4, there just isn't the time. The main thing to take away for now is that Aileen Crudley is definitely an unsettling character, to me the most unsettling one to appear in the show. The combination of her revolting crimes, her utter lack of remorse, and her empty, immoral pursuit of aspiration means she's callousness personified. And yet, through actor Geraldine Moffat's excellent and nuanced portrayal, Aileen does possess an undeniable charisma, which is perhaps the most unsettling aspect to the character of all. And that concludes the top 5 most unsettling inmates from the show. So, who was your favourite, if that's the right word to use, and did you agree with my number 1 choice? Is there anyone you think I've missed out from the list that you would have included? And how do these inmates compare to similar characters in other prison shows? Let me know in the comments. And if you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and consider subscribing so that you can see more similar content in the future. Thanks so much for watching.